What's up, my guys? What's up, my girls? It's good to be with you. Welcome back to the Dani podcast. This is the 53rd episode of the Dani podcast. I'm excited to be with you. And I was thinking about one of the stereotypes. There are a lot of stereotypes about philosophy, right? There's a lot of stereotypes about people who are philosophical. Like, I remember I've told this joke before, and it's not really a joke. It's a story about someone else's joke. But I had one of my friends on the podcast. His name is Ryan Hayes, and before I even knew what philosophy was, and before I even decided to pursue philosophy, just as a an interest. And before I decided to pursue it as an academic major, I used to have lunch with my friend at work, and he or I, or somehow the topic of philosophy came up, and I was like, yeah. So I think I said, what do you have to be a philosopher? He's like, all you have to do to be a philosopher is just say you're a philosopher, and bam, you're a philosopher. Right? So that's one of the stereotypes about philosophy. But another one is that philosophy is just deep thinking. That's all that it is, right? And then people who are philosophical or philosophically minded, have a philosophical mind, sometimes they get labeled as overthinkers, right? And what philosophy is supposed to do is it's supposed to help you think efficiently, right? Because philosophy, it's in the mind. And I'm sure all of us have experienced this, no matter what age we are. I'm 30, about to be 31. We all get mental fog. We all get mental fatigue, right? Sometimes it's hard to think clearly, right? And the point of philosophy is to help you think. One of the points of philosophy is to help you think efficiently. But the reason why I was thinking about this stereotype about all philosophy is deep thinking. And then one of the things that's deliciously ironic about philosophy is that if you think philosophy is useless, if you think it's pointless, if you think we don't need philosophy, we don't need philosophers, right? If somebody says, well, why do you think that? And you start to explain it, all of a sudden you're using philosophy to explain why we don't need philosophy and why we don't need philosophers. So that's one of the great things, right? That's built into philosophy, and then that particular stereotype. But the reason why I was thinking about it is because St. Valentine's Day is coming up, which is a Catholic holiday. Now, when I was younger, I didn't know that. The reason I know that now is because I'm hella Catholic. So, like a lot of things, I don't want to say most things, but a lot of things, in the United States, we move away from the original meaning. So St. Valentine's Day, St. Patrick's Day, Easter, I would say even Lent leading up to Easter, and then Halloween, believe it or not, and then Christmas. All of those have its origin in Catholicism, in the Catholic Church, in Christianity, with Jesus. So St. Valentine is a saint, right? So on February 14th, his life is celebrated. He was a Catholic, and he did certain things for the church. He's the patron saint of love. St. Patrick, same thing, evangelized Ireland. March 17th, I believe, celebrate him. He was a Catholic bishop. Lent is the 40 days of preparation for Easter, and then Easter is the day that Jesus resurrected, and then Halloween is the way that we now say All Hallows Eve. If you think of the Our Father, hallowed be thy name, it means like holy, like saintly. So all, if you think of Christmas Eve, it's the night before Christmas. All Hallows Eve is the night before All Saints Day, which is November 1st. So October 31st is Halloween. And then Christmas is the birth of Jesus. So like a lot of these calendar holidays originally, and they still are in the church, feast days and holy days and solemnity days or whatever. But so yeah, I'm about to be 31. I remember that when I was in middle school, I want to say it was either the 6th or 7th grade. I mean, the further you get away from your youth, the harder it is to remember things. But I remember, as a lot of 6th and 7th grade boys, I had a crush. And a lot of times as a boy, you have a crush on someone that you think is like out of your league, someone that like you couldn't imagine that they would be interested in you. And a lot of that has to do on like looks, right? The girl might be pretty, she might be beautiful, gorgeous, whatever adjective you want to use, but you cute, whatever, like you, but you think like based off of the way that she looks and based off of the way that I look, like she's out of my league, right? And you, I mean, as you get older, you realize that you don't really know that unless you like ask her out. She says no, then you're not what she's looking for. She says yes, then you're not out of her league, right? She's willing to go out with you. But I had a crush, and I did end up making the girl my girlfriend, and whatever girlfriend means in middle school. But I remember I was in disbelief, right? Because in my mind, like, she was good looking, and I didn't think that I was at the same good looking level as her. And we would talk on the phone, and back then, in my opinion, not only did I think that she was cute, but she also had a cute personality, so we would talk on the phone for hours. And then Valentine's Day came up, and got her Valentine's Day gifts. And then shortly after that, without her telling me, the way that I remember it is like she called me on the phone. I couldn't talk. And then next thing I knew, like the next day after that, or a couple days after that, it came back to me through the grapevine that we were no longer dating, whatever dating was in middle school, and that she had another boyfriend. And maybe she was calling me to like formally break up with me, but since I didn't have the time to talk, she probably just moved on, right? Now, I remember that like the guy that she was like dating, that was her new boyfriend, like other girls thought that he was like really good looking. So it was almost like the initial fear that I had came true, right? Like I was out of her league and she found somebody in her league, and it was all just like based on looks. And the reason I'm bringing it up is because I don't think it's unique to me. I think even at a young age, like we have this sense that looks aren't everything. And that's what goes into what we describe as like heartbreak, right? If you think that somebody left you because, whether you're a man and or a boy, and a woman and or girl leaves you for another man and or boy, whether you're a man that a woman leaves you for another man, and you think like maybe she probably left me because he's more good looking or whatever, like that thought we're allergic to that kind of thinking because we perceive that as like shallow. Like I'm sure there's more to that person than their looks, and there's more to me than my looks. And the same thing with like when a woman gets left for another woman, and maybe she herself or a lot of men perceive that woman as real pretty, and maybe she perceives her as more prettier than her. Like part of what goes into that heartbreak is, okay, there's more to me than my looks, and maybe I'm not as good looking as that person, but there's more to me than my looks. Now, that the real like fear, like the biggest fear is if you're a man and you get left for another man, the real fear is like, not only is he more good looking than me, but he's got better personality than me. That's the real, right? And the same with a woman. If you're a woman that gets left for another woman, it's like, not only is she better looking than me, but her personality is also better. But the reason I'm using this example is because it's weird that there's this stereotype against philosophy that, you know, we don't really need it. It's just deep thinking. It's overthinking and stuff like that. But then at the same time, we are allergic to people who want to be in relationships with other people for shallow reasons, whether it's looks or money, or maybe a person doesn't necessarily have looks or money, but they have like that one thing that another person desires, and that's all it takes for that person to get, right? It would be a shallow reason. There needs to be a deeper reason to be in a relationship with someone, and that leads me to believe that none of us want to be perceived as shallow. And in vulnerable moments when, you know, maybe we do get heartbroken, in those moments we do want to be seen as philosophical. Like the reason I say that, because like is if you get your heart broken, you almost want like another chance. That way you could talk to, because the only way that you can get to the deep stuff is by talking, right? Like by trying to communicate what's going on in your mind, by trying to communicate your views, even at a young age, with the limited knowledge and wisdom that you have. You're trying to communicate to other people your views on life, your views on morality, your views on what you consider fun, what's interesting to you, what you think about the universe, even like small things like what you think about like school. Like a lot of times when you're in elementary, middle school and high school, you know, someone might ask you like, how was school, or do you like school? And as soon as a kid starts telling you, a kid might tell you like, no, I don't like school, or I do like school. And if you ask why, as soon as they start to explain that why, they're getting philosophical. When you, even at a young age, when you're getting into a romantic relationship with someone, those long conversations on the phone, you guys are getting in a very basic way, you're getting philosophical with each other. You're trying to get to know each other. You're trying to go past just the appearance and the looks and see if the personality is just as good as the looks, if not better. What you want is better, but I don't want to say settle, but for lack of terminology, we settle for like, okay, if this person's personality is as good as their looks, like I want to be with this person. And a lot of times that's why sometimes a good looking person, they might be in a lot of, I think we can tell, right? If you have a good looking guy or a good looking girl and they fail in relationships, we kind of say, well, okay, most likely something is wrong with their personality, right? There's something not deep enough inside for them to, you know, be able to stay and keep in a relationship. So in conclusion, right, I think even though there's these stereotypes about philosophy, you know, it's just deep thinking, we don't need it, you know, just to name a few. At the same time, even if it is just deep thinking, none of us want to be perceived as shallow, and what we're also seem to be allergic to, like shallow people who don't think deeply, and people that would settle for, to be in relationships with other people for shallow reasons like looks, money, power, things like that. So I think that by virtue of the fact that we're human, we're the only ones that can be philosophical. Like, sure, like even humans and animals, like pets, like dogs, we can interact, and there is a certain language there, right? Like you can train a dog to understand certain commands and things like that, and then you might be able to tell when your dog is sad or whatever. But humans are the only ones that are aware, and we're aware that we're aware, and we have a mind and we can think, and just by that fact, we're the only ones that can be philosophical. And I mean, even like this podcast is philosophy of life, right? And like, so one of the other stereotypes about philosophy is that we don't talk about anything, but in actuality you can get philosophical about everything. And so not just my podcast, but think of all the genres of podcasts and all the genres and all the subgenres of podcasts. So like, I'm into fitness, right? If I were to focus on a specific fitness topic, if I were to focus on the squat, for example, I'm giving you my philosophy of the squat. You know what I'm saying? Like, I might even just have something like you should or you shouldn't squat. That right there is being philosophical. And if I say you should squat, and I start saying these are the reasons why, and I start saying this is how you should squat, this way of squatting is better than this way, I'm getting philosophical about it. People who have entrepreneur podcasts, business podcasts, finance podcasts, they're sharing their philosophy about that particular thing. So it's like all around us. And when you really when you have an interest in something, no matter what it is, video games, relationships, fitness, cars, or whatever, you'll get philosophical about that thing. So it's a weird dynamic. It's a weird, it's two weird opposites, that philosophy has these negative stereotypes, but yet we use it basically every day, and we use it just basically any time that we talk about something that interests us, something that we're passionate about. And it's just literally because we have a mind and a brain and we're able to think. So I hope that gave you something to think about. The focus wasn't meant to be Valentine's Day or like heartbreak or relationships, but I was just using that as an example of like, we have negative stereotypes against philosophy, but then we want to be seen as philosophical, even if we don't know that that's what we want to be seen as. So I hope you enjoyed the 53rd episode. If you did, and you happened to stumble on it and made it this far, please make sure to subscribe. If you're listening on the podcast platforms and not on YouTube, make sure to subscribe or follow it. Some podcasts it's a subscribe button, and some of them are a follow button. Whatever yours is, make sure to do that. If you're a regular listener, please make sure to share the podcast. That way, hopefully you might know somebody that I kicked my tripod. You might know somebody that this episode might help out. And I think that's it. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Really happy to be able to record this episode for you. And until the next episode, remember what Venerable Fulton J. Sheen, who was a philosopher, probably my favorite philosopher, remember what he said, and remember what his television show was all about, and that's that your life is worth living. Talk to you next time.